Vamos lá. Ok, estamos ao vivo hoje. Começamos no Gregoriano numa sexta-feira, 11 de março, ano de 2022. No Sincronário Maia nós temos o Hello Alice. I will invite you to... Let me invite you here. Join us. I will explain what are we going to talk about. Assim dá tempo o pessoal chegar. Hello, welcome here. Hi. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you well. Can you hear me well?
Very good. All right. I'm just gonna introduce this live in Portuguese quickly, and then let people know that we're gonna do all in English.
Okay, great.
That's okay. Okay. Então, galera, para quem for chegando, essa live vai acontecer em inglês. A Alice é uma jornalista, fotógrafa belga. Depois eu vou ver quem tem o aplicativo para poder traduzir, para entender em português. Quem não tem, depois eu faço um resumão dessa live em separado. Ela vai ficar salva e vai acompanhando. Eu vou desligar os comentários para a gente poder fluir com essa live, tá? Sejam todos bem-vindos. So we're going to start this live. I was just saying that it's going to be all in English. And I'm going to turn off the comments, I think, so we just flow without interruptions. But if you feel that this live is very interesting, you're free to invite some friends to join us. And eventually, I will open up for a few questions. And you can pick one card, and I can pick one card for people, maybe for a collective reading, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will save this live as well. All right, guys? So how do you do this comments here? I don't know how can you turn off the comments. So let's go. So Alice, introduce yourself for us using your words and your life experience.
Oh, wow. I always have a hard time introducing myself because I don't just do one thing, like I can't say like I'm a teacher or I'm this because I do lots of things. But if I need to like summarize everything into one thing, I would probably say like I'm an artist and maybe, like a revolutionarist. Like I love to revolutionize systems and break rules where I feel they're no longer needed. And I love to create. I just love to create new things. I love to use my creativity. I love to travel as well. I think that more or less describes me. And I'm from Belgium. I grew up here. My native language is German, which is rare. Usually in Belgium, people speak French and Dutch, but there's a minority that speaks German. And I have spent a lot of time in my life in Haiti. And I also have traveled a lot into other countries and other continents.
Do you attribute that to your Sagittarius ascendant?
Say that again?
Desire. Do you attribute this desire to always getting to know what's ahead of you, beyond the horizon, and go to different places?
Yes, definitely. I can definitely feel the Sagittarius ascendant. I also get along very well with other Sagittarius people, and I'm definitely not a typical Cancer. Cancer is my non-sign, and so it's definitely the Sagittarius energy.
But according to our previous talk, your description, it's very in tune with the Mayan law of time symbols. Like you are a planetary white word bridger. And the white word bridger kin or stamp talks about all this transformation that wants to brings revolution to him or herself and to those around. And the tone of the planetary tone speaks about manifestation. So you bring this manifestation to your life, and when you feel that, oh wow, this is not working any longer, I need to change and to move from water to wine, as we say in Portuguese.
Yes, definitely.
All right.
Definitely. That really resonates.
And how was this? How was your inspiration to? No, before this question, how old were you when you first got in contact with the tarot?
I'm not sure if I remember the exact age. It was 21, 22, or 23. Well, definitely beginning of my 20s. That's
And
20.
how were you introduced to this world of archetypes, mythology, and all dives that using, tarot as a tool of self-knowledge, we discover more about ourselves and we can help people as well.
Yeah, it was really interesting how I entered this world because as a teenager, I was an atheist, like I didn't believe in anything magic or supernatural. I was very against that. My mom was very into it and I was making fun of her. So at the beginning of my 20s, I started to work as a photojournalist. And
Mm-hmm.
I was looking for news, like I would always like enter different worlds and photograph them and tell stories. That was my job, and I really loved it. And then one day I was researching something, and then I came across this article that said that there are people that call themselves witches in Europe. And I'm like, wait, what? I'd never heard of that before. It's like, oh, that sounds very interesting. That could be very interesting to, like enter this world and maybe do a photo project. At the beginning, it was just for a photo project. And but because this group of people, the Wicca and pagans and all of that, they were very reserved when it came to being photographed because a lot of people had made fun of them before. So they wanted
So
to
it
get...
was like also as a protection, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed to get them to know them first so that they could trust me. And so I started going to all these meetings to participate in the ceremonies. And at some point they allowed me to take a few photos, and it all turned into like a really big photography project where I like traveled the whole world and I photographed witches, usually in the Western world. And at some point, I ended up in the UK in a tarot workshop because it was a witchcraft tarot workshop. It was mostly a witchcraft weekend where they also use tarot. And he is now like the person who organized it. He's the founder of the Tarot Association in the UK, and he allowed me to come to the weekend and take photos for them and for me as well for my project. And he was the first one to explain the tarot to me. He is very, very knowledgeable about the tarot. He has written lots of books about it. So he actually gifted me my first tarot deck. And
oh wow! Which deck was this one?
it was the Rider-Waite deck.
Mm-hmm.
And then he explained to me how the tarot works. He has this really, really cool method where he can explain you the tarot in 10 minutes. Yeah,
Wow.
like, of course, not in depth, but so that you can really start understanding how it works. And then he suggested I take a daily card every day to connect to the cards. And so I started doing that, and that's how I first connected to it.
And how was the process after that? Were you a person that likes to read books by yourself and learn from it without a teacher, or did you go through other people to teach you how to go more deeply into these studies?
I read mostly books, and I kept in touch with Marcus Katz is his name, so I kept in touch with him, and he would also I would go visit him sometimes and learn from him. I photographed another one or two of his workshops, and then I was always there and I participated in it. And then I also went to witchcraft weekends with other people, and it was just really around me a lot. So, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
very good at picking up things that I'm interested in. You know, like I'm not the kind of person who sits down and gets the proper teaching. It's just like if it's
Mm-hmm.
all around me and somebody says something and it interests me, I remember it. And then I'm very practical with learning as well. So like picking my daily cards every day really helped to
Mm-hmm.
connect intuitively. And then I had some really great books from different authors where I would read the meanings of the cards and see the different interpretations. And that was really how I learned.
Good.
Yeah.
At that time, did you feel that to get to know more about astrology, would you help you? Would you help you reading the tarot or not? How is your connection with astrology as well?
The astrology, I actually started, I was always very interested in astrology, even before I
Mm-hmm.
started tarot. But I never learned how to read it for myself until 2 years ago. So
Oh,
I was
wow.
very into tarot, and of course, I knew, the sun, the ascendant, the moon, and
The
how to read
basic, yes.
the basics.
Mm-hmm.
But now I can actually read a whole chart
Mm-hmm.
and do like even a reading for someone else. I'm like intermediate, I would say, in
Mm-hmm.
astrology. But that's something I learned maybe 2 or 3, even 3 years ago now. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and so I created my first tarot deck without the knowledge of astrology. But now, of course, that it definitely helps once you know astrology.
For I'm gonna interrupt just a little bit. People, I was introduced to Alice by my friend Nikki from Malahim Tarot, Nikki in Australia. And it was really interesting how you use like normal people, average people, to picture each one of the 78 cards that exist in the tarot deck. And you use the classical interpretation of the Rider-Waite-Smith too. And you were inspired by it to create your first deck, which was the Ghetto Tarot. Is that right?
Yes.
And what was the difference between the process, yes, of the creation of the Ghetto Tarot and the process of the creation of the Gift of Life Tarot? How were they different? I mean, because you use pictures of normal people and both of them, but how were they different? And if you notice inside of you a transformation from one creation of the first deck to the second deck.
Yeah, it's definitely transformation. The process was completely different. Like one was a creation process, and I also, I based myself on the Rider-Waite deck, and I mostly copied the images of the Rider-Waite and turned them into photos. There are a few photos that are different in the Ghetto Tarot, but most of them are very, very similar to the Rider-Waite deck. So it was very different because I just took something that already existed and I created it in a new way, in a new interpretation, but based on an interpretation that already existed. And
But
then
then
for the
also an interpretation from your eyes. And do
yes,
you
definitely.
think that as a photographer, like, do you think that the power of your soul, that is a photographer, imagine something different that Pamela imagined back in 1909? Because we were totally different times.
Of course. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's completely different. You can't, you can put the two decks next to each other and it's not the same thing, but they're still, it's still based on it. But yeah, definitely my own eyes and my really deep connection to Haiti, where I took the photos, made it a very, very personal project. And to until today, I think that the creation of the Ghetto Tarot is probably the most fun thing I have ever done because it was just so much fun to work with the Haitians and it was
Talk a little
done.
bit more about it, because from what I heard, there was a participation
Yeah.
With artists, yes, local artists.
Yeah, it's not only the local artists. There are also some of my friends who are not part of the artistic group, but there were many of the people from this artistic group called Artistes Résistants. They, some of them were also my friends. I just, like okay, how can I start to explain? So one of them was a good friend of mine, and I always asked him like to tell the others about the project that I was doing, and if anybody was interested to participate, they could participate. And I always brought the tarot cards there in the morning. I would start at 5 in the morning because the light is beautiful in Haiti. So at 5 in the morning, I would go. And every time I went, there were like 5 people sitting there wanting to participate. I could always pick. I could see like, okay, which photo do I want to take today, and which person would fit best to this photo, because there was always like plenty of people that wanted to join the project. And it was so much fun. It was so in flow. When you talk about like complete alignment, I can really say this project was in complete alignment because anything I needed was there. So even, when we were photographing the fool, I needed a little dog, and I didn't know where I was going to get a little dog from. And that morning when I wanted to photograph the fool, there was a little dog just around the corner. And it was a baby dog. And I asked the owner, and she was there, can I borrow your dog for a photo? And she said, sure. And so we just went, took the photo of the fool, and it took like 10-15 minutes because it was just, it was just so easy. Anything I needed was there. When I needed a horn for the high priestess, as an accessory, then my assistant, my friend Claudel, he's just like, oh, just wait a second, and he went and he came back 3 minutes later and he had a horn, and I had no idea why he had a horn, but like he all the little things, all the symbols that I needed, I found them very close by where I was working. And so we were able to create this deck, 78 cards in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Which is incredible amount of time, but I was also working nonstop. I would start at 5 in the morning because the light was so good. Then at lunchtime, I would take all the photos inside the houses because the light outside was really horrible. But inside the houses, it doesn't matter how the light is outside. So you have some. Maybe I'll show also a few of the photos. Right. You can see. So here, for example, we have the magician. So this would be a photo I would photograph very early in the morning. And then, let me see, then this year we have the 9 of machetes. I photographed that at lunchtime.
And how did you organize the whole scenario? Like you were like somebody with you, like a participant, like how can I say, no, an assistant that would create the scenario for you and be there in case you need to, like you are in hold of your camera and look, you can do this, you can do that, or you can do something else. Like you were people as a team as well working with you like every day.
I had one person, my friend Claudel. He was with me every day, and then there were always people around. In Haiti, you're never alone. So for this photo, for example, I needed to hang all the machetes on the wall. This is it's not photoshopped. It's really photographed like this. So we just needed some nails, and so I would ask Claudel, can you get me some nails? And in Haiti, there's always a market around the corner, so he would just go to the market and then you get the nails, and then Claudel and somebody else just put them in the wall, and then we took this photo. We're like, here we would just, I just put them behind. For this photo, for example,
I did like an effect. Yes.
Yeah. And for this photo, for example, I didn't need any assistance. There are like lots of photos where I didn't need assistance, but then here, I needed them to make the fire. I saw the one day I went there and somebody had made a fire. So it's like, oh, that looks really great. I want to have another fire for the Ace of Wands, which which is like the Ace of Wands. Well, this deck, for example, you know, the Death card, which is different than the Rider-Waite Tarot deck, because there was no way I could copy the Rider-Waite Tarot Death card with the whole. So I created this one, and you can see skulls in it, no? And
now, in this card, particularly in Brazil, there used to be a guy for a TV show, and I would translate his name literally. It would be like John for the coffin, kind of this way. And the guy dressed up all in black outfit, and he wore like huge nails, but all resembling the death. Because also there is a creator for kids magazines, and there is a character called Death. But when you draw, it's one thing different than the person. But this man, you know, kind of used the outfit of the kid's character to bring to him and to create a whole program. So he was entitled, you know, I am the John of the coffin, and I'm gonna take you to the other world. So it's similar to this card, you know.
Well, this guy actually dresses up like Baron Samedi, which is a Haitian Loa, like from the Voodoo religion. And it's the guardian of the cemetery.
Oh, wow.
And Haitian people that are into voodoo, that are practicing voodoo, they like to dress like the Loas, to like invite them in and let them possess them. And so you often see people in Haiti like that in ceremonies or during festivities where lots of people dress up like that. And then the skulls that you see in here, they're actually real skulls. They're also
And how did you get these real skulls?
They just had them. The group of artists that I was working with,
it's good to know, because everything just went in a synchronicity with your work. I mean, with your project, like no blocks, no lack of material for you to work with.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. Yeah. We have the sun card. You know, this is a painting that was already on the wall in Port-au-Prince, in a different part of Port-au-Prince than I was working. But because I knew Haiti so well, I knew this painting. So I was like, oh yeah, I want to create the sun card in front of this painting. And then some days before, I just found this horse. I took it with me so that it would.
What has led you to Haiti? Was it for professional circumstances or a personal desire to go there?
It was when I was 19 years old. I was studying photography, and one photographer came to our school, and he said he was a very famous documentary photography, and he showed us photos, and they looked awesome. And I was like, wow, I want to do what he does. And he said that he started out as being a photographer in his studies. He would just go on a semester break to other countries and photograph there. And so I was like, I'm going to do that too. I like the idea. So I just wrote out emails. I really like to do that until today. You know, like when you want something, don't just send one email, send 100. Yeah, like this. And even if you get rejections or no answers, send more, because there is going to be a positive answer that's going to come. So I send out 100 emails. First, I send out 50 emails, and I only got one positive reply. I wrote to nonprofit organizations to ask if I could stay with them being in these countries, because I had never been to a country like that, and I needed some form of like guidance when I was there. So I thought it could be great. I could photograph for the nonprofit organization. They could use my photos, and therefore I could stay with them. And I wrote 50 emails, and one organization wrote back with a positive answer. But I wanted to have a choice, so I wrote out another 50 emails. And then in the end, I had 7 organizations who said yes. And they were in 7 different countries. And one of them was in Haiti. And I researched every country. And when I researched Haiti, I was like, wow, this sounds interesting. I want to go there. So I chose Haiti. And so I was 19 when I went. I had my 20th birthday there. And I spent a month immediately. Like the first time I was there, I spent a whole month. And then I just kind of got so fascinated with this country that I wanted to go back. I felt like one time was not enough. I don't understand what's going on here, and I need to go back. I want to understand the culture. I want to understand why the people are so poor, because I didn't just believe the stories, the narrative that we're being told. I wanted to dig deeper, and I want to understand, why is the poverty there? Like, why is Haiti the way it is? And I really understood that Haiti is kind of a microcosm for the problems that we have in the whole world, because any problem that happens anywhere in the world, most likely it also happens in Haiti, because it's such a little country, but so many things happen there. So I went back every year until one day I decided to even move there. When I fell in love with a Haitian man, and I stayed there with him for 2 years, and I lived with him and his family. And after that, when I had really spent a lot of time there, that's when I created the Ghetto Tarot. So that's why it was very easy to create it, because I knew it so well now, the country.
Probably seems like a rescue from past lives, that you probably lived there somehow, or that you have some connection with either the spirituality or the land or whatever we can name. Were you there when there was this major earthquake?
I was actually not there, but I was on my way. So I had just landed in New York, because that's where I need to do a stopover. And I was gonna spend one day in New York and then fly to Haiti. And when I was in New York during that day, the earthquake happened. And I was really scared, and because I couldn't reach my friends. I didn't know if they were still alive or not. And I really wanted to be there. And so I found an airplane to fly to Haiti. So I was there 5 days after the earthquake, but not during the earthquake itself.
And how was were you really impacted by the effects of the earthquake, and were your most friends, how the earthquake affect their lives?
So none of my friends died, which was I was very, very happy about. And most of my friends were able to, get out of get back to normal life quite fast. They were all middle class Haitians. So it was more the poor society was impacted a lot more. The middle class was actually receiving a lot of opportunities after the earthquake, because so many nonprofit organizations came in and flooded the country in money as well. And so there were lots of jobs created because of it. So my friends were able to receive help like that. But then there were a lot of people that were from the poorer society, and they lost their houses, and they were now living in tent camps, and that was really difficult and these camps, they stayed for a really long time. And even at some point, I don't even remember when it was, after 2 or 3 years, the government decided to move this camp that was still in the middle of the city. They just moved it out of the city, and built
But
some
as they, oh,
wooden huts.
okay, all right, better situation for them. Have you been to India?
Yes, I've been to India. Yeah, the gift
And
of life.
how,
You will see
yeah,
lots of India.
sure, yes. I remember that some pictures, like I shuffled the card before our live, and this one showed up. And I
Mm-hmm.
like because of the rickshaw, and this is so India. When you go there in this chaotic traffic and all the horns and everybody screaming. And in Brazil, people say that, oh, India is so bad, but to my eyes, there's so many similarities, between Brazil and India. And how would you see India with Haiti?
Oh, it's
Do you
very
think that
different.
different? How different it is? And the way people relate to each other, or the society as an organization?
It's both. So first of all, let me say what they have in common. They're both very chaotic. They both have crazy traffic. They both have a huge problem with trash.
Mm.
They both have amazing nature and beautiful beaches and
An amazing soul.
mountains, and they both have a really deep connection to spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
and also this sense of community, um, which you need to have in countries like that, where like you really depend on your community to survive. So you have that in both countries. But the feel I have when I'm in Haiti or when I'm in India is very different. The smells super different. The smells,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the Indian spices you smell when you go through the streets in India, and in Haiti is very different. The Haitians, are, I don't know, they have like a different temperament than the Indians.
Would you
I mean,
say that's more to the Latin blood?
to what? Sorry?
To the Latin blood, to the Latinos?
Yeah, I think the Haitians are more like the Latinos. Like they have
Mm-hmm.
this fire energy, and
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and they know what they want, and they say it, and sometimes they get loud, and I don't know that from Europe, because we
It's
don't,
true, yes.
but I really like it, like I like how they just, it's kind of, they also they sing their words sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
I really like that. um and in India I have felt, I don't feel that same kind of temperament. I feel the Indians are more calm, um more, yeah, it's hard to describe, more grounded, I would say. The Indians are, I don't, but it's also hard to say because they're all so well connected spiritually.
No,
It's
like
different.
my, I understand, but for example, I never been to any country in the Central America. I had the opportunity to work overseas, and my father used to work for an airplane, so I used to travel since I was little kid. And then you get to know different cultures and how they relate to one another. But when I went to India, it's impressive how, like, sometimes they have nothing for themselves, but they offer what they have for you. I mean, they have never seen you in their lives, and they just treat you like God, and they tell you, like, no, you have a God inside your heart, and I bow to your God, as I believe that you're gonna bow to me. So after that, you just get touched, and there's a similarity in the very roots of Brazilian people as well. Because here in Brazil, like, there is a space for everybody. It doesn't matter where you're from. There's always space for people to come to Brazil and be treated as, one of us.
Yeah.
So this is something that there is a connection with Brazil and these countries as well. Because when there was the two major problems that Haiti faced, one was the earthquake, and I think it was two earthquakes. I can't remember. But Brazil was instantly, like we need to gather funds or people or whatever help to send to Haiti. So this was very fast, this connection, like Brazil and Haiti.
Yeah, and Brazil was also I don't know how it is now, but back then in 2010, I know that Brazil was one of the only countries Haitians could go to without needing a visa.
Yes.
That was very rare because they really needed a visa to go anywhere, and it was so difficult to get a visa for them. So Brazil was very friendly. I even remember back then in 2010, the Brazilian president coming to Haiti and they having a meeting. I photographed it.
Oh, wow. Maybe you can find this picture and share with us. I was just talking to a friend that we are going to have, presidential elections. I'm not bringing here people, political issues because I don't want to bring chaos, but just out of curiosity, Hey, Father Holistic, hello from Brazil.
Yeah.
Because there was, this particular president, he came from the very poor class, and this man came from, he was born into a very inner city of a state that suffered from lack of water. I mean, no rain, nothing. So really dry earth. And the family moved to one of the biggest cities in Brazil, which is São Paulo, to start all over, a new life. And this is a story very similar to many people in Brazil, and I think that's why so many foreigners that face these problems about, well, we have no opportunities and we are looking for opportunities and we are hard work people and we would like to sum up. Anyway, so he tried. Eventually, he was elected, and he transformed, Brazil that was into a misery state of, food and housing and all other things for low class population, and transform so everyone could have, food in their plates and electricity in their houses and even water. So curiously, this subject came up. But anyway, come back to the tarot chat.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump to the pandemic. So the pandemic hits, and then no jobs for everybody. We are locked up, and that's when you created the Gift of Life Tarot. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
All right, so now let's speak a little bit about this process.
Yeah, so
and I choose, for example, there's this card that I love, and I wonder, is this lady the same lady that appears? Because they're so similar. I know she's from Panama, yes?
Yeah.
Because it's funny, like when, in my case, I was attracted to tarot probably, I don't know, when I was 12, because I started learning astrology. That led me to tarot cards, and then I went to the tarot world, and eventually, I moved back to astrology. And it's funny when sometimes we tell people, oh, you get in touch with your tarot deck and go over a moon cycle of 28 days to get in touch with the deck to see if the deck talks to you. But you were so instantly, connected when I received your deck, and I was like, wow, and I started reading. And I would like you to speak about the life purpose spread, which is really powerful. This lady here, is she the same?
No, it's not the same, but it's
But
highly likely that
yeah.
they're from the same family.
Okay. Because
Because
I was in doubt if they were like the same lady.
yeah, no, they're not the same lady, but they're this was photographed on a little island with 400 inhabitants. So there were only a few families on the island, and so it's I don't know personally like if they are related, but there's a very high possibility. So
Maybe like
could,
when they get together within families, like cousins, they marry one another, and
yeah,
probably the resemblance.
yeah, they also marry other indigenous people from the other islands. You know, there are lots of little islands in front of Panama with indigenous people.
All
Yeah.
right. So tell us a little bit about this creation project.
Yeah, so it was in 2020 when the pandemic started. I was supposed to go to India that year to photograph a new tarot deck, and then that didn't happen. And so instead, I was studying astrology, and I was
Traditional
relaxing.
astrology,
Yes.
Western, okay.
Yes, and I was relaxing, and then one night I couldn't sleep, and then in the middle of the night I just had the idea, oh, well, you don't have to go to India to create a new tarot deck. You have photos from 13 years of travels from all around the world. Like, why don't you create a tarot deck from this? And this was actually not my idea in the first place. In 2008, when I was with Marcus Katz, the tarot teacher, when he gave me my first tarot deck, he told me I should make a tarot deck with my photos.
Oh, wow.
But back then, it didn't resonate with me. And then I created a ghetto tarot first, you know, where I created something, but this idea to create it from photos that already exist, that I have taken in the moment, that are not staged, was actually the idea of Marcus. And so, but it took me more than 10 years to actually pick up the idea and do it. And so this pandemic moment was brilliant because, you know, I had nothing to do. And
Were you by yourself during this period of time, or were you with a partner or with somebody, some other
yes,
member of the family?
with my partner at the time, yeah. And
How was this period of time for you, Alice? How did you see now, 2 years, almost 2 years past the beginning of the pandemic, in your personal transformation?
Do you mean that moment back then or the whole last 2 years?
If you put together, you know, back there until now, how many changes has the pandemic brought to the Alice, the very Alice, instead of you?
I think the pandemic in itself has just, you know, like got me back in touch with my creativity more, because now, okay, my plans were gone. Okay, well, what do I do then? And then, you know, like I created a new tarot deck, which is something I would have done even without the pandemic, but a different one. So and I feel in the last 2 years there have been immense amount of changes in my life and immense amount of growth, but not necessarily caused by the pandemic. But I think it's just the energy that's in the field right now is creating so much change, so much growth. And yeah, I can really say that I have really learned in the last 2 years how to create healthy relationships, which is something I struggled with all my life, and I had no idea how to do it. And somehow in the last 2 years, I have found the information on like learning how to do it. So I'm very happy about that. And so that created, of course, a huge shift, because I come from a very codependent background, very dysfunctional family dynamics. And I was able to look at all of them, dismantle them, change them. And I'm still in the process of changing them. I'm not saying like I'm completely 100% healthy now, but I've changed a lot of them. So for me, in my
And lots of
personal life,
forgiveness process as well. Forgive yourself and forgive the past experience within the family that led you to this moment in time, right?
yes, for me, forgiveness, I don't force forgiveness, but I have really learned in the last 2 years is that if you cannot forgive someone, then you have not learned a lesson from that situation yet. So
It makes sense.
don't force yourself to forgive that person, but look at what you haven't learned yet. Because once you learn that lesson and really create that change in your life, then you can forget that person and you can actually be grateful for that person because it has brought you something, a gift. Yeah. So yeah, I have definitely forgiven a lot of things because of what I've learned. Yeah,
That's
so
good.
I've really enjoyed the past 2 years, even though they have been a bit chaotic. But I was still able to I felt free and able to do what I wanted to do with some limits, but I usually see limits as challenges to overcome, and I don't let myself held back by anything. I just have to use my creativity to
To
get what I
overcome all
want.
these challenges, yes.
Yes.
All right, so talk a little bit about the life purpose spread.
Yeah, so let me first tell a little bit about the Gift of Life Tarot, which
Okay.
I haven't talked about yet, and then I tell about the spread. So it was in 2020 during the pandemic that I started going through all of the photos that I've taken in 13 years of being a photographer. And at the beginning of my career, I was a photographer who would never stage any photos. I would just go to different countries and be an observer. And I take photos in the moment, like street photography, where you just capture a scene that you see where you don't intervene. And I really loved that for a long time. Now I'm more like I love to create more, but back then I loved to be the observer and create from what I was observing. And so I had thousands of photos from all different continents. Of course, not Antarctica, but all the other continents. And so I wanted to create a deck where I could find one photo that can really transmit the energy of that specific deck, of that specific archetype or card. So that specifically also for people who are new to tarot and who have no idea what a card means. So they look at the situation that they have probably even experienced by themselves in their life at some point and then get it. It's like, oh, okay, this is what the card means. So that's how I created the deck. And I had trouble finding the right name for this deck. And then I decided, the best way to give it a name is connecting to the deck in spirit and asking the deck what it wants to be named. And so I did that, and then the answer came. It was the Gift of Life Tarot. And then I was communicating with the tarot deck, and I asked it what this deck is really good for. And it told me that it's really good to help anyone find their life purpose, like also like look at the gifts and situations, because also of the moment when it was created, which was a moment where it looked like it was a huge challenge, this pandemic, for so many of us. But if we can look for the gifts in these challenges, if we can zoom out a little bit, sometimes you go through a challenging moment and then 5 years later you look back and you can see the gift that was in it. But this deck told me that it could give you the answer already in the moment of in the challenge itself. So you don't have to wait the 5 years to to realize. what was good about the situation. So I was communicating with the deck, and it was telling me these things, and so then I got the inspiration to create. I like creating specific spreads with each tarot deck I create. I'm working on my third tarot deck right now, and I've already created a spread for that one too, because I feel like it's really nice when the creator of a deck also gives you a specific spread that is really good for this specific cards. So so the life purpose spread I created so that people can connect to their life purpose and to their gifts and to their talents. For me, a life purpose is not necessarily your career. It is something that you bring with you into this life that you can, of course, make a career from, but you're gonna do this thing anyway. And very often we are not even aware that we're doing this. Like me, for example, you can put me in any job, it doesn't matter. I'm always going to question things, change things, catalyze things, because that is part of my life purpose. And other people sometimes they're not everybody is aware of what their strengths are that they naturally bring with them, because they're so good and come so natural to them, and they sometimes it's also looked at as something negative. Like me, for example, I have had a lot of problems, specifically in my teen years, with this purpose that I'm here, because authority figures, they don't like that. So some people, I think, they also cut off from their purpose because they've had such difficult situation, like they had hurt because they were so disapproved of by people around them for their gifts that they maybe have forgotten about them. So this life purpose spread is there so you can reconnect to the gifts that you bring with you.
Very nice. And it's right there. It shows you like you're walking towards your path, or maybe you need some changes. How is this third deck? Has it got a theme already?
Yes, it has a theme. It's almost finished. I'm going into pre-production next week, probably.
Oh, wow. Good.
Yeah. And I'm gonna launch it again with a crowdfunding campaign. And the theme is children, and it's going to help you connect to your inner child.
Oh, we all need that.
Definitely. I feel so. The reason I wanted to create this deck is because, first of all, I adore children. And I adore children because they are so connected to source, and because they are so themselves. They don't have masks. And yeah, maybe there's some things they don't know yet, but there are things that they know that we have forgotten. And so I love spending time with children because I love to be in their energy. And it has helped me personally so much to connect to my inner child. That was the most healing thing I could do, especially in all these relationship dynamics that I had from my childhood, the dysfunctional dynamics. I always went back to these situations where, what the root cause was, and I talked to my inner child. I connected to my inner child. And so I wanted to create a deck that can help you to connect to your inner child. And of course, it's a photography deck, and you're going to see children on it.
No, and there are a lot of children in the other two decks as well, and like you capture just the purest sense of absence of malice and their natural light that comes from the inside to the outside, as if they're the capture of their soul,
Yeah.
without masks. To sum up this live, what about if you shuffle your Get a Tarot and I shuffle the Gift of Life, and we leave a message for whoever is watching this live now or that's going to watch it later?
Okay,
Okay, you first.
I start. So I
Mm-hmm.
have the Queen of Machetes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think how I would interpret this card at the moment is that it's super important right now, especially with this situation that we're in the world, where everybody is looking at what's happening, to really bring together our our logical mind, our questioning,
Mm-hmm.
our wisdom, with the feminine energy of guardianship and nurturing, not to be too much in one of these energies, but to really combine them, to bring them together, and to, yeah, use our logic and our heart. In, yeah.
In synchronicity, I got the temperance. And
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning, I thought that this was you. That was, when I opened the pack without reading the book, and then I saw that actually it's your friend. And we need balance, and all this balance of feminine and masculine energies. And when we are in the middle of a storm, we need to be at the center of it in order not to be shaken and be taken, to all the places other than our very own core. So I think that they two combine of the meaning and a message for people to, if you are imbalanced and like reason and emotion, for example, and the traditional, the rider Waite, when you have, the guardian angel or the archangel is mixing the water, but then has one foot inside the water and the other foot placed on earth, that we need these complementary energies, but they need to mingle to become one,
Mm-hmm.
but one very stable energy. And usually, like when I see the Queen of Machetes that's associated with the Queen of Swords, that the element of air, like to bring focus as well.
Yeah.
And astrologically, we are under the influence of Mercury in Pisces, that maybe our thoughts are just, we don't understand clearly what's going
Mm-hmm.
on. But if we use our telepathy and the connection with our dreams and maybe translate dreams into action, we can go through this fog and find, our direction.
Yes, that's beautiful.
All
Thank you.
right. I Andrew want to thank you for, for accepting this invitation. And it was so curious about how this deck came to my hands as we spoke in a private message, as the problems I was facing with my mother and all her death, and the way you did the lucky draw that I totally forgot. And you won the deck. Oh, that was a gift of life, because when you're next to a person that's about to die, I mean, the whole movie goes in front of you as what is really important.
Yeah.
And sometimes people give importance to think that, well, you're not going to take that to the other world, you need to get a really, like, the essential, that's the very soul. I wish you, a good success in your third enterprise with this new deck.
Thank
And
you.
I'll wait for the picture with the Brazilian president to share here,
I actually have to see if I still have that one. It's a long time ago. I don't know if I have it still.
maybe, let's see, if it's there, it will show up.
Yes.
And I also would appreciate people that stayed with us, to listen to all our chat and in a way receive the messages that, Alice said, you know, because I think the life experience, as one goes through, can be of example to others, especially when we face challenge and we are able to overcome the challenges and inspire other people.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All
Thank you
right.
so much. It was really
Thank you,
lovely
Alice.
to spend time with you,
And
chat with you.
yes, welcome to Brazil. Next when you come to Brazil, then we meet each other, personally.
Definitely, it's one of the countries I haven't been to,
All
but I
right.
definitely want to come.
All right, good. Bye bye. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye, people.